Well, thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm Dave Horton, the creator of 2 open source projects, Jambonz and Directio, that I'm going to talk to you about. First of all, I want to thank Alan for everything he does. He's been a big supporter of my project, so I definitely love to support his stuff. When I heard this was going to be in Paris, that was kind of a no-brainer, and even more so when I realized the World Cup of Rugby was going to be going on. So I came over a week early and got to spend time in Marseille, and did one of my favorite things in the world. Well, this is being recorded, so my favorite thing in the world is spending time with my wife, but my second favorite thing in the world is to watch the Welsh rugby team play. I spent part of a year in Wales, a while, 5 years or so, when I was first starting these open source projects, and loved the culture and the rugby culture over there, so it's been fantastic. A couple months ago when I told Alan I wanted to come and do a talk, I was kind of busy, heads down writing code, and I just couldn't think of what I should talk about. I had just done another talk, I didn't want to recycle that. So I kind of just asked him, what do you think? And like ChatGPT, he sent me back a whole talk, basically with bullet points. And this is what he sent back, which is, you'll probably see. First of all, this is what he sent back to me. And when I saw it, my response was, what the hell? This is pretty bombastic kind of language here. I mean, I like to think I'm kind of a humble guy, but now I'm going to talk to this. And then I realized, okay, he's trying to be provocative, and that's good, and this will spur some discussion. But his title was How Open Source Jambonz is Disrupting CPaaS. And I have to say, that triggered something with me, because I feel like we've fetishized this term disrupt. I'm just so tired of seeing it everywhere, and the concept that we have to break something all the time just sort of goes against the grain with me. What about continuous improvement? What about improving what's there? What about reaching back into the past and finding things to draw forward? I don't mind it if it just didn't turn up in front of my face every day in any tech article I read. But Jambonz is an open source CPaaS, and then he makes the point you no longer need to use Twilio, Sinch, or Telix. I know some of those products. Jambonz and its community are disrupting a $100 billion market. Okay, come back to that. The next one was true, though. Open source is hard, and I've made loads of stupid mistakes, and people love to hear about mistakes, so I was totally on board with that. Best of all, you're going to learn $100 billion worth of stuff in the next 20 minutes, apparently. And, so no pressure. But the gist of it is a talk that I did want to do, which is my journey with open source, some things that I've learned. So let's get right into it. Is Jambonz disrupting CPaaS? Well, yes, but really only in the sense that open source is disrupting telecom. But no, in the sense that Jambonz it's not disruptive, really. It's not new stuff. It's a culmination of what I see as 15-year industry trends. And, the way I look at it is Twilio and Jambonz to me are kind of two sides of the same coin. If I look at Twilio, I see a company, that founded the CPaaS on a really rock-solid, impregnable foundation. But in the last 5 years really hasn't innovated much, has really transitioned more to acquisition, does a lot of nonsensical marketing stuff, celebrity-driven webinars, which seem pointless to me, and hasn't executed in spaces where I thought it really would have, like hosted contact center. They should have really owned that, I think, to a large extent, so they really haven't. In all regards, it's a company that's sort of milking the long tail of this market that they've created. And Jambonz is really the other side of the coin, just illustrating over the last 3 years that basically open source has progressed to where a one-man project can build a platform that is basically 80% of what Twilio does. It's just an illustration of that. So is there a disruption there? Jambonz is not something new. It's more a reflection of what's happened in open source over that period of time. And I think it's worth reflecting on that, because like Ernest Hemingway said about going broke, things happen slow and then fast, and that's sort of what's happened in this space. Twilio was a product built for its time. That was 2008, very early cloud, so they were right there, A lot of telcos weren't on the cloud. They were ready to go when they were. Back then, we forget, there was really broad, at least in the US, very broad patent protection. People were trying to get very broad patents and succeeding in patents like, there was a guy running around with an IVR patent in the 2000s. It was ridiculous. So I had a commercial company at the time, and we had to be thoughtful about, well, is this guy going to sue us? What do we do? Where's patent? That's changed radically in the US for the better. We don't spend any time now thinking about, hey, is this going to violate someone's patent protection? Twilio had the advantages of scale, kind of a first mover advantage, especially before there was a cloud. You really had to have a lot of dollars to put together to buy infrastructure that it was hard to catch up to. Systems back then were really complex. I mean, it's not like today where a click and I've got a SIP trunk, click and I've got speech recognition. It was buying hardware and software from Nuance and and trying to figure out how to integrate it and getting dialogic cards and the like. It was just very different. And so of course you would pay someone to do all that for you. And that led to a high cost of change and substitution. These solutions were complex. It was hard to change off of them. And then finally, something that's changed is all the complementary services you needed to get a SIP trunk. Those were actually pretty hard to do back in 2008. You sort of had to be kind of a high priest to know someone, how are we going to get a SIP trunk from this carrier? Now it's, it's simple. Again, credit card, click, and you're done. So all of that stuff changed, and it was really the foundation. It was the reason you needed a company like Twilio. That plus the convenience, which they still offer. But increasingly, you don't need that. A lot of enterprises still will choose for the convenience. But telcos and CSPs really don't need that anymore. So those were all barriers to entry that protected their business. They're basically all gone now. And Jambonz is just a reflection of that. I'm not sure what people know about Jambonz, so I'm going to do a super quick kind of speed round pre-taped video, 3 minutes. Just so you know kind of what I'm talking about. And I'm going to focus on what are sort of the winning features that, from my perspective, have made Jambonz achieve some degree of success. The first is it can run anywhere, so you don't always want a hosted provider providing a SaaS, especially in today's era of data privacy. You maybe won't run it in your own VPC, on your own hardware, here, there, wherever. It's a bring your own everything CPaaS, so there's no point in me selling you speech recognition services when it's a click to go get it. There's no point in me selling you phone numbers when it's easy to go get it. Everything is designed that you can plug in your own everything. Data privacy is sort of a core principle, as it should be today, and look at some reasons that is just because you're using a provider to provide communication service doesn't mean that they should be holding, things like customer transcripts or recordings under their lock and key. It should be under your lock and key. And finally, it's open source. You can pack it with your own innovations, and these are probably the 4 reasons why people have migrated off of commercial SaaS to Jambonz. So let's just see if I can just. So just a video, I'll talk through it. But again, the first thing is run anywhere. So in 5 seconds you can sign up for our SaaS. You can pick a domain and you can do that, and you're up and going. Get a free account, and that goes as long as you want, and then you can change it. But it turns out most people, most Jambonz customers, want to run their own stuff. That's why one reason why they picked Jambonz. So you can spin it up at CloudFormation, run it in your own VPC in AWS. It can be as small as a single server. It can be a cluster, autoscale cluster. All that stuff's created for you. Not just AWS, you can run in Kubernetes if you want. You can run in Google Cloud. You can run in Proxmox. Basically, you can run it anywhere. Bring your own everything. We support a bunch of different speech services, probably more than any other platform I've seen. And then when you pick a certain service, we support all the bells and whistles for that service. We also support custom speech. You can plug in your own. Add carriers, pretty straightforward. You can add a trunk to your PBX, to your carrier. We support all the different options you might want to do. Add your IP addresses, specify whether you want to use encryption for your media and so forth. Looking at call recording, you can record calls, a lot of choices, the format, but they're not stored on the platform. They're stored in your storage. You put in your AWS 3, your Google Cloud, your Azure Cloud. We're not going to store your recordings. They belong to you. but we'll let you get recordings and send them off to your account. And then you can play them back. So we were talking about PCAPs earlier, so for people that like PCAPs, of course you can download a PCAP. What's sometimes even better is open telemetry tracing. So at a very low level, you can dive down in a call, say, was the database lookup slow? No, that was 2 milliseconds. I guess that was the text-to-speech? How long did it take to do that? So you get a really low, customers can see this if you expose it to them, really low level of detail through this tracing to see if you've got to troubleshoot an individual call, what exactly went wrong. You can see the actual transcripts, the raw transcripts returned from the ASR. If you do call recording, then you can play them right out of the portal. I have the sound turned off so you're not hearing it. What's even better is you can overlay the ASR, so here we can see where we're listening for speech. We were using DPRAM, you can see the transcript we got back. Even better, you can see the latency a little bit. You can see the end of speech and then the end of that red bar when we got the transcript. That's about 200 milliseconds. You probably can't see the hash mark. So really good latency there. So it's nice to be able to see that as part of the recording. Of course, you have to manage these systems or clusters, so we provide a profound dashboard with that. Really low level kind of stuff that your NOC people might want to know. How long are database calls taking, text-to-speech, talking to the media server, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's basically it. Yeah, so that's kind of my speed run through Jambonz. Let's switch back here. So to get to Alan's other point, sort of mistakes I've made, and I've sort of combined it to key decisions, whether they were sometimes driven by mistakes, sometimes things that at the moment seem like not mistakes yet, maybe they will in the future. One big decision was choosing the MIT license. I didn't choose the MIT license because I'm sort of an open source religious kind of person. It was actually a business decision. I was competing in the 2000s with a commercial product against sometimes some open source, and what I saw was that we would go in with a sales cycle of up to a year, and in that year the open source product would improve so much. The tempo of their improvement was much faster because the price was zero and they were out there every day getting beaten up, fixing, getting beaten up, fixing, and I really wanted that tempo, that pace of improvement. I was driven by one thing, which was to build the best software I could, great software. I wasn't thinking about the business model. I just wanted to build the best software I could. The way I was going to do that with the limited resources that I had was through an open source license that was very permissive and got a lot of people in. And it's proven this point. I mean, just some examples. This product's been beat up in a lot of ways that I never could have imagined. So when it comes to ASR, I've got a customer that does taxi dispatching, and he's doing ASR of people in Scotland getting out of a bar at 1 a.m. speaking a address. And I can't think of anything more challenging for an ASR. Maybe some of the Arabic dialects, but a drunken Scotsman at 1 a.m. is like right up there. And I've got another customer running Jambonz that was handling all of the Eurovision calls in his country for, Eurovision ends and everybody calls in to vote on a system that was load tested up to 600 arriving calls per second. So there's all sorts of benefits you get from when you drop the price to zero. The price elasticity is just infinite. As far as the business model, it's really services based. I didn't want to hold anything back. I decided that everything would be open source. So no sort of open core, but you really sort of need these things, but you'll pay for these things. For better or worse, I just wanted to maximize building great software. I saw that as using the open source license. So the business model is services based, and that works out fine. Part of it is convincing customers to buy services. I often have customers who want to think that this could be a secret weapon for them. They don't want people to know they're using it, which is kind of a pain in the neck for me. And I have to change their mindset. I'm not selling you a secret weapon. To use some Old West lingo, I'm selling you a fast horse and a day's ride on the posse. You're going to use this and be ahead of your competition. Now, having said that, that horse is going to get a lot faster if you retain us to help you. That's kind of our message, and it works fairly well. Not everybody chooses or needs to take up support, but that's kind of how we are. I think a mistake I made early on, I remember talking to someone who was really knowledgeable in the industry, and I had just come out with the first version, and it was voice only, it didn't support SMS, and they said, well, you know, Twilio makes all their money off SMS, you definitely got to support SMS. And I said, sure, so I thought about it, I went ahead and did it. And so we added SMS, support for SMPP. And there really hasn't been much of a take rate for it, because the customers sort of have their own solutions already. I'm not doing anything. Voice is much more challenging, and there are problems I'm solving. I'm not sure I'm really solving a lot of problems with SMS, even though the platform does now support it. So I tend to listen more to customers now and less to industry pundits. One of the decisions I made that worked out was investing in a hosted SaaS, and it's been a loss leader because it turns out people, one of the reasons they come to Jambonz is they can run their own stuff anywhere. So while we provide a hosted SaaS platform, what it's really great for is letting people trial the system. In a lot of cases, open source, you know, people's experience with open source is someone, you know, it's akin to someone opening up a bag of parts and spilling it on the floor and say, yeah, go assemble that, and you're going to see a great bird cage or something, I don't know. And, you know, no one wants to spend a day trying to figure out how parts go together. So having a SaaS where people say, click, here's how it is. Yes, great, love it. Okay, what are my other options for running this has been worthwhile. Interesting, you know, I early on I was doing support kind of on an hourly basis, and that led to it was ineffective in a lot of ways. I tended to do a lot of small projects for people who probably didn't value my time that much. And I started to realize when you're doing an open source project, there's just a universe of people out there, and some of them you can really provide a lot of value for. Some of them you really can't, and that's okay. But if I'm not working every day providing value to somebody, then I'm not putting value in the product. So going to a retainer-based support model made so much more sense, because if I'm not providing you enough value to charge you, whatever, $1,000 a month, that's fine, but it's not really worth my time. I want to find those people for who I am providing that kind of value for. You know, I think community is a license plus a culture, so the license is MIT. So I've tried to establish a culture that the software is free, but the community is different. If you want to take the software, go off and do something with it, that's fine. If you want to participate in the culture, you've got some obligations to contribute. But we have a very broad definition of what it means to contribute. Mainly, it's helping find bugs. A lot of it's just sharing information with the rest of the community. If you find something, you learn something that could be useful to other people, we kind of expect you to share it, unless it's part of your secret sauce. We understand that. But I think it's very important to have a culture where the software is free, but if you want to be in the community, you've got to contribute. Mainly, I want to see everyone caring about making the software better. If they care about that, it will reflect in their actions, and that's enough. But if somebody comes and they're really only focused on solving their problem, that's fine. They just need to go do that. They can't be part of the community. I had the MIT license, I had an interesting story earlier. Before Jambonz, my first open source project was Dracula. Also open source, also MIT. And at one point I realized, I came to find out that Amazon was using it. They were using it for Amazon Chime because someone on the project reached out to me and they, I don't know, they wanted some changes or something, or they let me know they were using it, and I was like, that's great. I was kind of excited. I felt maybe they'll support the project. But of course, although they're the most powerful company in the world, it's apparently very challenging for them to do something like that. I'm told, no, we can't really support it. Well, you're making fixes. Can you contribute? Well, we really can't contribute fixes. I said, okay, fine. He went on his way. But a couple months later, he contacted me back, and he's kind of pissed off at me. He's like, you made this change. It was a breaking change, and you shouldn't have done it that way. And he was completely right, by the way. But I was sort of pissed at that point. I was like, don't you realize that I care less about you than I do about some teenager in Asia in his bedroom who's hacking on my code and maybe contributing something? And you put yourself in that. It was amazing to me that someone would choose to do that. I'm going to use your software. I'm the richest company in the world. I'm going to put it in some mission critical stuff. But I'm okay if your attitude towards me goes up and down on a monthly basis based on anything, your bank account, whether you have enough money to spend. It was just ridiculous. Anyway, sorry for the digression. But I mainly want people to care about making the software better. And so everybody that comes on, I feel like, I'll give you a free lunch, then you got to work. I help people on board. You don't know anything, I'll get you up to speed. But after that, you got to contribute some way or another. Again, it could just be sharing information. It could be finding a good bug. It could be documenting something. It could be helping us run on another infrastructure we haven't done before. I think one of the things I've learned as an open source founder is that you really have to pay attention to your attention. That's the scarce resource. You go in thinking money's the scarce resource, my time's the scarce resource, but it's really your attention. Actually, I can show this in a different way. In a past life, I was an economist. So this is basically showing a price elasticity demand curve. And if you're pricing something, you're going to choose a price that's going to maximize that square, the price on demand. When you choose open source, it's because you want that price elasticity that goes to infinite when you go way out there. But that means you get all sorts of different people in your project. You've got a person like P1 who puts a pretty high value on what you're doing. You got a person like P2 who uses it because it's free, doesn't put a high value. For him or her, it doesn't have as high value. And that's fine. That's fine. Those people can be in the project. But you can't be spending a lot of your attention on those P2 people. Because by definition, you're not creating much value for them. You've got to find the people, the P1s who you are creating value for, and really put your attention there is what I've learned. So if you price a support contract, you ought to price it that you expect a large number of people to say, no, that's too expensive. That's great. If I price something that everybody can afford, then I don't have the time, I won't have the attention for that. The last sort of thing what do we do? I feel like if I had a motto for open source, at least the projects I've been involved with, it would be unsafe at any speed. There was a famous book called the 1960s, and it was about a sports car that GM built called the Corvair. And the Corvair was kind of a great car in almost all regards, except it had design flaws in its suspension system such that when around a curve, it had a pretty good chance it was going to flip over on you. And open source feels like being in that car, seeing a curve a quarter of a mile down the road, accepting that the situation is what it is, and you're going to fix the suspension before you reach the curve. Because you don't have the luxury of a room full of QA engineers to test everything for you. You have to have, you make a lot of triage decisions. You have to build good software. You have to expect there to be bugs in there. You have to be able to understand what is a good bug, what is a good rate of quality, and you can't look for perfection the way telcos do, or other companies that are really operations kind of companies. And you have to be really, really good at that. Jambonz competes in the conversational AI space as a voice gateway with audio codes. Now, audio codes has got buildings all over the world and a ton of engineers. So how is it that Jambonz, with a team currently of 2, can outcompete them? Because we're moving a lot of people off audio codes onto Jambonz. And it's only because of the open source and the pace at which we can improve and smart decisions we make about how to handle risk. And I think that's really just a critical art, I suppose, that is part of open source. That's you really need to get comfortable with, because it's not we're used to perfection, but you are moving at a speed where some level of defect is expected and desired if it's the right kind of thing and if you have plans for it. That's my feeling anyways. Oops. Yeah, so that's it. If people have questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I know people want to get to lunch too, so.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dave.